It was exactly 6:42 p.m. when I opened the front door and found a stranger's heels next to Jason's loafers. The scent of vanilla perfume in the hallway was sharp, intrusive, like it knew it didn't belong. I stood there for 2 full seconds, my keys still in hand, my heart thudding against the silence of our supposedly shared home. That was the moment I knew something had changed. Not suddenly, not violently, but with the quiet confidence of someone who never planned to hide for long. But before that moment, there was once a version of me who believed in the kind of love that doesn't measure net worth. My name is Sienna Brooks. I'm 31, a senior project manager at Altara Tech in Denver. I wasn't born into comfort. I was raised on coupons, night shifts, and the soft sound of my mother whispering, "We'll get through this," when the lights were cut off for the third time in a month. I clawed my way into college with a full scholarship, spent nights in the library instead of parties, and sometimes skipped dinner to afford a used textbook. My resume was spotless, not because I wanted perfection, but because I couldn't afford to fail. I became the woman people call intimidating, only because they don't know what hunger tastes like. Men didn't quite know what to do with someone like me. I dated a few, always ended quickly. Some got uncomfortable when the waiter handed me the check. Others told me I was too intense. One even said, "You don't leave room for a man to feel needed." I remember laughing politely. Then I went home and stared at my reflection for an hour, wondering if strength had quietly turned into loneliness. Then came Jason. We met at a birthday party I almost didn't attend. I had just finished back-to-back meetings and was one migraine away from calling it a night. But my friend Layla insisted, "Come for an hour. You need to laugh." I showed up in a blazer and sneakers, not expecting anything. But Jason? He wasn't trying to be impressive. No loud jokes. No exaggerated confidence. Just a quiet guy in a navy sweater who asked if I liked Riesling and actually listened when I answered. He made me feel quiet inside, and after years of noise, that silence felt like safety. He texted the next morning, then the next. Slowly, I began looking forward to his messages, to his late-night voice notes telling me about the worst HR case of the day, or asking about the song I mentioned in passing. Within 2 months, he asked if we could try something serious. "I don't care if you make more than me," he said. "I care that you smile when you see me." I remember blinking twice before saying yes. We got married the following spring. It wasn't a Pinterest wedding, just a small garden in Boulder, our closest friends, and the soft smell of wet leaves from the early rain. He held my hand during the vows, steady and warm, and for the first time in years I thought, maybe I don't have to be steel all the time. Maybe someone sees me as more than just capable. I moved him into my 2-bedroom condo near Cheeseman Park. We split the chores, cooked on Sundays, and each night he'd kiss my forehead and whisper, "Thank you for being my wife." I believed him. I believed everything. Until that pair of heels showed up. Until the scent of a stranger's perfume sliced through our hallway like a blade wrapped in sugar. It started with a casual conversation over dinner, the kind that usually ends with dishes in the sink and a quiet evening on the couch. But that night, Jason pushed his plate aside and said, "Sienna, there's something I've been thinking about my parents." I looked up from my glass of wine. My fork paused midair. "What about them?" He hesitated, just long enough to tell me he'd been carrying this for a while. "They're getting older. Dad's blood pressure is all over the place, and Mom keeps forgetting things. I'm worried." I nodded slowly. I knew Frederick and Lillian weren't in great health, but they lived in Evergreen, nearly 40 minutes from Denver. We weren't exactly around the corner. "I want us to move closer," Jason said, then added, "or maybe we convert their house. Renovate it into a duplex. 2 separate spaces. We'd still have privacy, but I could be there for them." I set my fork down. "You want to move in with your parents?" "Not in the same space," he clarified. "We'd have our own unit. Full separation. Just one wall away. My friend works in construction. He says the place has good bones. We could make it work for around $100,000. 100 grand. I exhaled slowly. It wasn't the number that scared me. It was the shift, the sudden pivot from us to them. From weekend dinners with in-laws to possibly sharing a wall with them for the rest of our lives. Jason leaned forward, sensing my hesitation. You wouldn't have to do anything. You wouldn't be expected to cook for them or be their caretaker. They really like you. And it would mean a lot to me. I didn't respond right away. That week, I carried the thought like a pebble in my shoe, barely noticeable but impossible to ignore. Every time I opened my closet or planned my week or looked out over my balcony, I felt something tug at me. Would I be trading my independence for a polite kind of prison? But the truth was, I loved Jason. I trusted him. And so, one Friday evening after dinner with his parents at their house in Evergreen, I said yes. Lillian's eyes filled with tears. I know this isn't easy for you, sweetheart, she said. Thank you. I smiled, but deep down something shifted. Not alarm, not regret. Just a quiet, creeping uncertainty I couldn't name. We began renovations a few weeks later. Jason and his contractor friend drew up plans. 2 units, one shared hallway with a lockable door, separate entrances. From the outside, it would look like a single home. On the inside, it would be independent but connected, as Jason called it. He threw himself into the details, backsplash colors, garden layouts, light fixtures for the hallway. I tried to keep up. I even suggested tile samples and reviewed layouts. But something about the process felt uneven. Then came the budget spreadsheets. One evening, I was reviewing the detailed estimates when I realized I hadn't seen a single document signed by anyone but me. Hey, babe, I asked casually, how are we splitting the $100,000? Are your parents contributing anything? Jason looked up from his laptop, visibly caught off guard. Well, I was hoping you could front the money. Just for now. I froze. You mean all of it? Not permanently, he said quickly. Just to get us started. They're going through a rough patch financially. I'll pay you back. Promise. I didn't argue. I didn't demand answers. But something in me, the part that once felt safe with Jason's quiet smile, began to close like a window before a storm. The first payment came out of my savings. $50,000 wired to the construction firm in 2 neat transfers. One for structural changes, one for permits and material down payments. I told myself it was fine. This was a home, after all, a future, an investment. I even kept a neat folder labeled Whitfield Renovation in my drive, with every invoice and email thread carefully stored. Because that's who I was: organized, prepared, responsible, too responsible maybe. As the months rolled on, I continued to foot the bills. Design fees, electrical rewiring, appliance orders, garden landscaping. Each one sliced deeper into the savings I had spent 10 years building. Jason would pat my shoulder, offer kisses between work calls, and mumble things like, "You're incredible, you know that?" I'd nod, even smile. But my heart wasn't entirely in it anymore. Not because of the money, but because the gratitude started sounding rehearsed. Then came the evening he said it. We were on the couch, my laptop open as I tried to balance the updated costs. Jason had just come back from a supply run and seemed unusually jittery. Hey, he said softly, before we get too deep into these numbers, there's something I should probably tell you. I paused, hand hovering over the trackpad. Okay. He took a breath. My parents, they're in some debt. Not massive, but it's significant. My fingers lowered. How much? He hesitated just long enough to make my chest tighten. About $140,000. I blinked. Excuse me. He rushed to explain. It's from a failed investment. Dad tried to open a cafe franchise. It flopped. Then he took out another loan to patch the first one, and now it snowballed. I didn't know until recently. I swear. I stared at the screen, but the numbers blurred. So they're $140,000 in debt. And you're telling me now, after I've already paid for nearly everything else. He reached for my hand. I didn't want to stress you. I thought I could figure it out before bringing it to you. But now things are getting tight. Tight. I nearly laughed. Jason didn't cry. He didn't beg. But he looked at me like a man cornered by his own failures, and I stepped in like I always had. I told him I'd help. Another 70,000 wired. And the rest? I arranged monthly payments, $5,000 each month, documented, tracked, every cent accounted for. Lillian called me crying. You saved us, sweetheart. I don't know how to thank you. Frederick sent me a scanned letter, handwritten, calling me a miracle. I used to believe that. For a moment, I wore their gratitude like armor, like proof that I wasn't just throwing my money into a pit. But gratitude fades fast when it's been rehearsed. As the months passed, Jason stopped contributing altogether. I still paid for groceries, utility bills, furniture. When I brought it up, gently he shrugged. I've been dealing with delays at work. My commission's tied up in a long-term client. Then show me your pay stub, I said, hoping it sounded casual. He stiffened. Why do you always make it about money, Sienna? Do you think I'm lying? I didn't answer. I just sat there, watching him, wondering how a man who used to send me golden retriever memes now looked at me like I was the IRS. I didn't argue. I didn't press. But that night, I opened my laptop and made a new folder, this one labeled contingency. Because something told me the real debt hadn't even begun. It was a rainy Sunday evening when the mask slipped. I remember it clearly, not because it was dramatic, but because it wasn't. That's what made it worse. The casualness of it, the effortlessness with which they discussed me like I wasn't even real. I had just returned from an overnight client visit in Aspen. My suitcase was still in the trunk. I wasn't supposed to be home until the following morning, but a canceled meeting meant I could surprise Jason. Maybe cook his favorite red curry, show up with a bottle of Merlot. I was tired, but in the kind of way that makes home feel like relief. The moment I walked in through the side entrance of the Maple Heights residence, I knew something was off. There were too many voices, too relaxed, too loud for a house built on secrets. I slipped off my heels and stood silently behind the hallway wall, the recessed lighting casting soft shadows across the hardwood floor. Then I heard Frederick's voice, dry and amused. You really found yourself a gold mine, son. Jason chuckled. You mean Sienna? Of course, Lillian chimed in. She's practically funding our future. The house, the debt, the upgrades. It's a full package. Then Jason, with a tone I didn't recognize, said, She makes it easy. Just act supportive. Ask about her work. Tell her she's amazing. Women like her, they want to believe they're respected. I didn't breathe. She's tough, sure, he continued, but deep down, all that strength is just loneliness looking for a reason not to be. There was laughter. Lillian, Frederick, even a younger woman's voice I didn't recognize. And then Jason again, soft casual. Once it's all done, we let her go. She's too sharp to keep around forever. Eventually, she'll start asking for real answers. Something inside me turned to ice. I didn't make a sound. I didn't scream, didn't crash into the room demanding explanations. Instead, I quietly stepped back down the hall, slipped out the same door I came through and got into my car. I sat there for 20 minutes in complete silence, rain sliding down the windshield like the world was mourning something I hadn't even buried yet. That night, I didn't go home. I booked a hotel in downtown Denver and sent Jason a text. International clients arrived early. Last-minute change. I'll be back Tuesday. He replied within minutes. No problem. Stay safe. Love you. Love you. The words curled in my stomach like a slow poison, but I didn't delete them. I screenshotted the message and filed it into a new album on my phone. I titled it Endgame. I didn't cry. Not once. Instead, I bought a digital recorder that evening and started organizing the hundreds of receipts, bank statements, and text exchanges I had saved. I highlighted every time he asked for money, every time he promised to repay, every time his family thanked me in writing for the financial help I provided. I collected it all not as a defense, but as ammunition. The next time I returned home, I was all smiles. I kissed Jason's cheek, told him I missed him, cooked a pasta dish he liked, and asked about his meetings like nothing had changed. But something had, because now I wasn't his wife. I was his creditor, his witness, his storm in waiting. Every morning after that became part of a quiet ritual, not just brushing my teeth, tying my hair, reviewing my calendar, but logging every financial detail Jason didn't think I noticed. I tracked utility bills he hadn't paid in months, took screenshots of his late-night Amazon purchases, started marking packages that arrived in his name, electronics, sneakers, gear for weekend trips I was invited to. I smiled when he walked by, kissed him goodnight, and recorded every word. Then I called Claudia Weston. She was a referral from a fellow executive, sharp, discreet, and known for dealing with financial abuse cases, though no one called them that out loud. In our first meeting, I laid it all out, the recordings, the receipts, the contracts, the messages. Claudia didn't flinch. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, folded her hands, and said, "You don't need revenge, Ms. Brooks. You need precision. You've already won emotionally. Now we make it legal." We started with the house. From the beginning, Jason and I had agreed to list the Maple Heights property under joint ownership, mostly for transparency. But in the months leading up to this moment, I'd suggested a change, transferring his share to me under the pretense of optimizing property taxes and streamlining liability if his parents ever required long-term care. Jason didn't question it. He signed every document I prepared, not because he trusted me, but because he never thought I'd use it. That was his first mistake. Then came the debt. Claudia found a legal path for me to purchase the remaining balance of Frederick and Lillian's outstanding $60,000 loan under a debt assignment clause, which meant I became the official creditor. The transaction was processed under my LLC, a silent holding company I had set up years ago for investment purposes. To the bank, it was just another transfer. To me, it was the moment I bought their leash. All of this I did in silence. At home, Jason still kissed my forehead before bed, still made jokes while stirring his coffee, still asked me what I wanted for dinner like we were planning our future and not standing on the edge of its grave. I played along, because the end game wasn't to leave, it was to make sure when I did, the door slammed shut behind me and they couldn't follow. One Friday evening, after finalizing the legal documents, I cooked his favorite, shrimp scampi, with garlic bread and a spinach salad. Lillian was over that night, raving about how well the renovations were turning out. "You've really made this place shine, Sienna," she said, sipping wine. "It feels like a real home now." Jason raised his glass and said, "You're the best thing that ever happened to this family." I raised mine too. "Thank you, Jason, for showing me who you really are so early on." He laughed, thinking I was being sweet. I wasn't. The next morning, I left before sunrise. I placed a manila envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside were the divorce papers, the official debt reassignment documents showing I now held the title to the loan, and a simple handwritten note. "Good luck negotiating with your new lender. I won't be generous." By the time he woke up, I was already in my penthouse downtown, sipping coffee on the balcony, watching the sun rise over the Rockies. It was the first morning in over 2 years that my shoulders didn't feel heavy, because that was the morning I stopped being their victim and became their reckoning. 3 days later, my phone buzzed at 8:47 a.m. Unknown number. I let it ring. A minute later, a message came through. "Can we talk? Please. Jason." I stared at the screen, then typed only 5 words. All communication through legal channels. No response. I thought that would be it, that the silence would stretch, that they'd accept it like cowards often do, disappear when the consequences arrive. But I forgot something crucial. People who live off others don't vanish. They regroup, they retaliate, and they always think they're entitled to take just one more thing. That Saturday, as I was getting ready for a financial leadership seminar downtown, my property manager, Mr. Wallace, called. His voice was tense. "Sienna, sorry to bother you, but someone changed the locks at Maple Heights. I got a report that Jason's moved someone else in. Said you no longer own the house." My stomach dropped. I didn't scream. I didn't swear. I just grabbed my bag, got in my car, and drove. When I pulled up to the house, my house, I saw a new lock on the gate and a different car in the driveway. The garage door was open. Inside stood Jason, calm, composed, wearing the same white dress shirt I'd bought him 2 birthdays ago. And beside him, a blonde woman walked out of the kitchen, barefoot, holding orange juice like she belonged there. Jason raised an eyebrow as if he were expecting me. "Sienna," he said, "I think it's better if you go back to your apartment. This isn't your place anymore." Behind his politeness there was smugness, a quiet challenge. I said nothing. He continued, "My parents think you could stay, but only if you agree to certain conditions." I tilted my head. "Conditions?" "Yeah, rent, of course. And since the house is more crowded now, it'd be helpful if you took care of the cleaning, laundry, and meals. You know, keep the peace." I blinked once. Then I laughed. Not a bitter laugh. A real one. The kind that starts low and rises until it fills the air with something that cuts sharper than anger ever could. Jason flinched. The blonde woman stepped back, confused. Still smiling, I pulled out my phone and dialed Claudia's direct line. "Claudia," I said when she picked up, "we're proceeding. Trespassing, unlawful occupancy, violation of property title. Everyone inside." "Yes, all 4 of them." I turned to Jason. "You have 3 hours to get out. You, your parents, and your accessory." He stared at me, face pale. "You can't do this. We were married." "Were," I said flatly. "You ended that." He took a step closer. "Sienna, I'm sorry, but you said you still loved me once." I nodded. "I said a lot of things, but I never said I was stupid." And with that, I turned and walked toward the gate. My heels echoed against the pavement, each step louder than any screaming match could have been. Jason didn't follow. He couldn't, because for the first time he realized the woman he thought he could control had already left. And the house? That wasn't a home anymore. It was just a battlefield I had already won. That Monday morning, Claudia delivered 3 envelopes by courier. One addressed to Jason, one to Frederick and Lillian, and one to the blonde girlfriend whose name I didn't even need to know. Each contained the same message, dressed in polite legalese but razor-sharp in meaning. Vacate the Maple Heights property within 7 days or face a formal eviction suit. Oh, and by the way, you still owe me over $60,000 in unpaid debt, now fully enforceable under Colorado state law, with me as the legal assignee. The debt was real. The house was mine. The signatures? All theirs. Jason tried calling 5 times that day. I didn't answer. He left voicemails, all sounding increasingly desperate. "I know you're mad, but can't we fix this without war?" The final message was short. "Please don't ruin everything." Too late. I let Claudia respond on my behalf. "Ms. Brooks will no longer communicate personally. Please refer all matters to her counsel." Next came the lawsuits. First, a civil claim against Jason and the girlfriend for adultery with financial damages, not for morality, but because I had evidence she'd been living in my house, benefiting from assets purchased with my money, while the marriage was legally intact. Photos, texts, delivery records, even a statement from a UPS driver who confirmed repeated deliveries, signed by Ashley, her name. Second, a demand for $75,000 in damages, including emotional distress, legal fees, and personal property devaluation during unlawful occupancy. Jason scoffed when he heard, but I had receipts, literally. Every bank transfer, every emailed, "Can you just help this once?" from him, every repair I paid for. Third, a debt recovery motion against Frederick and Lillian. The $60,000 I had fronted for their failed coffee investment wasn't a gift. It was documented in full, and under my ownership of the loan, I was now legally entitled to enforce payment. Claudia, brilliant as always, attached it all. The debt assignment contract, Jason's handwritten, even the voice memo of Lillian calling me a gold mine in heels. It wasn't evidence of guilt, but it was evidence of intent. Then came mediation. Jason showed up alone. His usual polished confidence had cracked. His eyes were sunken, his voice quiet. "I know I messed up," he said, "but if you push this, I'll lose everything." I looked at him, calm as ever. "You bet everything, Jason. And you lost it the day you decided I was a means, not a person." The girlfriend never appeared, but her lawyer did, with a check for $18,000 and a request that her name be kept out of court records. I accepted, not because I needed her money, but because silence, when it's backed by truth, cuts deeper than exposure ever could. Frederick and Lillian sent emails, emotional, pleading, "We're your family. Do you really want to see us homeless? We made mistakes, but you were like a daughter to us." I responded with one line, "You assumed I wouldn't know how to fight back. You were wrong." And that's when I realized justice doesn't come with fireworks or applause. It comes in the quiet unraveling of people who thought they could destroy you and watch themselves crumble instead. 2 months after the final court order was issued, I listed the Maple Heights property for sale. The same house I had poured my savings into. The same house that had once echoed with fake laughter and whispered betrayals. To someone else, it might have just been real estate. But to me, it was a graveyard of illusions. Tiles I had picked, walls I had painted, and windows that had looked out on a future that never arrived. The real estate market was hot. Within a week, I had 4 offers. A young couple fell in love with the layout, the dual units, the clean lines, the light-filled kitchen I had designed from scratch. They paid full asking price, $200,000. After deducting the costs of renovation, legal expenses, and taxes, I walked away with just over $40,000 in profit. Not a fortune, but enough. Enough to feel like I had closed the last door, with the key I had bought with my own blood and logic. Jason, the court awarded me $35,000 in alimony, payable over 12 months. The girlfriend settlement brought in another $18,000. Frederick and Lillian, facing legal threats and mounting interest, repaid the remaining $60,000 debt in 3 lump sums. Not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. Altogether, I recovered more than $150,000. But the real gain wasn't in the numbers. It was in the silence. The kind of silence that comes when your phone doesn't ring with new excuses. When your inbox isn't flooded with pleas or guilt trips. When your nights are finally still. I reinvested the proceeds. Enrolled in a personal wealth management course. Started working with a female financial advisor who specialized in clients recovering from financial abuse. Yes, I call it what it was now. I learned how to track not just money, but power. How to read patterns, not just in stocks, but in people. And most importantly, I learned how to live on my own terms again. One late afternoon, standing on the balcony of my downtown apartment, purchased fully in my name, paid in cash from a private fund I'd been building long before Jason, I looked out over Denver's skyline. The sun was melting into the Rockies, casting everything in a soft gold. I closed my eyes and let the silence settle into my bones. It felt like freedom. My parents came to visit a few weeks later. They'd never fully understood why I married Jason, but they never said, "I told you so." My mom looked around the apartment and said nothing for a long while. Then she reached out and gently touched my hand. "You're stronger than I ever imagined." I smiled, not to prove her right, but because I already knew. Do I regret loving Jason? No, because he taught me something I hadn't learned until I lost nearly everything. That no matter how strong you are at work, how sharp you are in a boardroom. If you hand your love to someone who sees you as currency, they will spend it until you're empty. But I didn't stay empty. I refilled my life, piece by piece, not with new people, but with a new version of myself, one that no longer believed in saving others at the cost of my own peace, one that no longer mistook potential for partnership, one that didn't need to be chosen because she had finally chosen herself. So here I am, not angry, not broken, just whole, and done letting anyone else write the ending for me.